You have not missed the window. That is not comfort. That is not reassurance. That is a fact. And it matters precisely because of what comes after it. You are 27, or 29, or 31. You earn a reasonable income. You have meant to start for 2 years, maybe 3. And every time you think about it, you arrive at the same conclusion. There is still time. Which is true. There is still time. But that sentence, there is still time, has been doing something to you that you have not examined closely enough. It has been functioning as permission to wait. This is not a video about why you should invest. You already know you should invest. This is a video about what the mathematics of waiting actually are, stated precisely without softening, because the softened version is the version you have already heard and it has not changed anything. By the end, you will understand what each year of delay inside this window actually costs, not in vague future value terms but structurally. The way an engineer understands fuel. The way a physicist understands trajectory. The window is open. The countdown is already running. Those are not metaphors. There is a moment in orbital mechanics, the domain of people who calculate the paths of rockets, when the launch window opens. It is not a general suggestion. It is a precise interval calculated from the position of the Earth relative to its target, the available thrust, and the fuel required to reach the desired trajectory. Launch inside the window. You arrive on trajectory with the fuel the mission was designed around. Miss the window, the rocket does not disappear. The mission does not end, but the trajectory required to reach the same destination now demands significantly more fuel. The correction cost is real. It is calculable. And it is not linear. It compounds with every additional hour of delay. This is not a metaphor borrowed to make the point more interesting. It is the most precise description of what is happening to you right now. Between the ages of 25 and 35, there is a structural window, a specific interval in which compounding capital behaves differently than it behaves at any other point in your life. The reason is not psychological. The reason is arithmetic. Capital that enters a compounding engine at 27 has more years to compound than capital that enters at 37. That is a fact. What is less understood, what has never been shown to you with the precision it deserves, is what that difference actually costs in real numbers. Not in the abstract. Not in the distant future. In the specific calculable mathematics of your current position. You are not being blamed. You are not being sold to. You are standing in front of a mechanism that has been running without your understanding of it. And the only thing that changes today is that you will see it. 3 concepts. 3 chapters. 1 window. And a countdown that began whether or not you were aware of it some years ago. A rocket sitting on a launch pad is not a failure. It is potential, fully fueled, structurally sound. Every system designed and ready. The engineers have not made an error. The mission has not been cancelled. The only variable is when it launches, and that variable is not as neutral as it appears. The launch window is not a preference. It is the interval during which the positions of all relevant bodies, Earth, target, available trajectory, are aligned such that the mission costs what it was designed to cost. The fuel was calculated for a specific window. Launch inside it and the calculation holds. Launch outside it and a new calculation begins. And the new calculation is almost always more expensive than the original. This is not how most people think about the years between 25 and 35. Most people in that window think about it as time. Available time. The kind that exists in abundance before it becomes scarcity. You have not yet felt the weight of urgency, so you operate with the logic of a person who has time to spare. And you do have time to spare. But the window is not measured in whether you have time. The window is measured in what that time costs when it passes unused. Here is the mechanism. Compound interest. The growth of capital on capital is not a linear function. A pound invested at 25 growing at 8% annually does not simply produce more money than a pound invested at 35. It produces a structurally different outcome. By age 65, a single pound invested at 25 has had 40 years to compound. A single pound invested at 35 has had 30 years. The difference is not 10 years of growth. The difference at 8% compounding is that the pound invested at 25 produces roughly 21 times its original value. The pound invested at 35 produces roughly 10 times its original value. The same pound. The same rate. The same destination. The only variable is the launch year, and that one variable cuts the outcome in half. Now apply that to a meaningful number. Assume you invest $300 per month beginning at 27. At 8% annual growth, a figure consistent with long-term diversified equity returns across multiple decades, that capital reaches approximately $1,060,000 by age 67. 40 years of compounding on a modest, consistent input. Now delay by 5 years. Begin at 32. Same $300 per month. Same 8% growth. Same destination, age 67. 35 years of compounding instead of 40. The outcome, approximately $710,000. The delay of 5 years inside the launch window, costs approximately $350,000 in final capital. Not because you invested less. Not because the rate changed. Not because the market behaved differently. Because the compounding engine had 5 fewer years of fuel. That is the launch window. Not a concept. Not a suggestion. A structural interval during which the mathematics of compound capital behave in a specific way, and outside of which they behave in a more expensive one. Now notice what the $350,000 gap actually represents. It is not money you failed to earn. It is not money you spent. It is not money that was taken from you. It is money that would have been generated, automatically, structurally, as a consequence of time inside the compounding engine, had the launch occurred 5 years earlier. It is the output of the mechanism you did not activate. Rockefeller understood this. He was not the first person to extract oil from the ground. He was the first person to understand what oil becomes when the extraction is consistent, the refinement is systematic, and the pipeline extends long enough. He did not build Standard Oil in a year. He built a structure that could run for decades. And then he waited for the decades to pass. He understood that the mechanism once running does not require heroics. It requires time. And that time has a specific cost when it passes without the mechanism running. You are not behind Rockefeller. You are not behind anyone. You are at a launch pad. The window is open. That is the diagnosis, not a reassurance, not a warning, a structural observation delivered as precisely as the mathematics that produced it. But there is something you have not yet examined. Something that operates beneath the surface of the delay. Not laziness, not ignorance. A specific belief, functionally invisible because it feels like rationality, that has been governing your position without your full awareness of it. The belief that delay is neutral. That is the next mechanism. Return to the rocket. It has missed the launch window. Not by much. A year, perhaps 2. The mission is not cancelled. The destination is the same. The engineers run the new calculation, and the new calculation has a line in it that did not exist in the original. A line for correction fuel. The additional thrust required to reach the same trajectory from the new position. The correction fuel is not a penalty. It is not punishment. It is not arbitrary. It is the mathematically precise cost of launching from a different position than the one the mission was designed around. The physics do not care why the window was missed. The physics care only about the distance between the current trajectory and the desired one, and what it costs to close that gap. This is the trajectory tax. It is not what you pay when you delay. It is what you pay after you delay for the rest of the journey. Because the gap created by delay does not simply wait to be filled. It compounds. Every year without the engine running is a year of compounding that cannot be recovered. Not by investing more later, not by finding a better rate, not by working harder. The arithmetic of missed compounding years is irreversible. Here is how the tax works precisely. You are 27. You have not yet invested. You intend to begin when things are clearer, when the income is higher, when the understanding is deeper. Each of these conditions has a reasonable sound to it. None of them changes the arithmetic. Each year of delay inside the launch window carries a specific cost. Not the cost of the year itself, but the cost of all the compounding that year would have produced across the remaining decades. A single year missed at 27 does not subtract 1 year from a 40-year compounding run. It removes the first year of compounding, the year on which all subsequent compounding would have built. At 8% growth, each pound not invested at 27 would have become approximately $21 by 67. Each pound not invested at 28 would have become approximately $19.50. The difference between those 2 years, not the pounds invested, but the compounding those pounds would have generated, is the trajectory tax on a single year of delay. Now extend this. If your intended monthly investment is $300, the tax on delaying from age 27 to age 28 is not $3,600, the money you did not invest that year. The tax is the compounding on that $3,600 across the remaining 39 years. At 8%, $3,600 invested at 27 becomes approximately $76,000 by 67. The year of delay does not cost $3,600. It costs $76,000 in lost compounding output. Repeat that calculation for each year of delay and the tax accumulates exponentially, not linearly. The cost of delaying from 27 to 28 is one tax. The cost of delaying from 27 to 32 is not 5 times that tax. It is considerably more because each delayed year removes not only its own compounding, but the compounding on the compounding of all the years before it. This is why the phrase "still have time" is structurally incomplete. It answers the question, has the window closed? The answer to that question is no. The window has not closed. You still have time. But it does not answer the more important question, what is the current cost of the time already passed? That question has a precise answer. And the precise answer is a number that increases every year. Not stays the same, not decreases as the situation improves. Increases, because the trajectory tax is not a fixed entry cost. It is a compounding deficit that grows with every year of delay. The viewer who arrives at 32, having delayed since 27, does not simply face a 5-year gap. They face the compounding output of 5 years of lost capital growth on every pound they intended to invest across those 5 years, calculated forward to their terminal age. That number is not abstract. For a $300 monthly investment at 8% across 5 delayed years, the compounding cost, not the investment cost, the compounding cost, is in the region of $130,000 to $180,000 depending on specific timing. That is the tax. Not on failure. Not on irresponsibility, on delay, on the specific choice, whether conscious or structural, to remain on the launch pad while the window is open. Now consider what the tax purchases. It purchases nothing. That is the precise definition of a tax in this context. The correction fuel required after a missed launch window does not produce additional momentum. It corrects a deficit. The investor who begins at 32 must invest significantly more per month than the investor who began at 27, simply to arrive at the same destination by the same terminal age, not slightly more. At 8% compounding, correcting a 5-year delay requires an increase in monthly contribution of roughly 40% to close the gap by age 67, not 5% more, not 10% more, 40%. The tax is not the delay itself. The tax is what you pay for the rest of the investment period to reach the same outcome the earlier investor reaches at the standard rate. And here is what makes the trajectory tax structurally different from other financial costs. Most financial costs are visible. An interest payment is deducted from your account. A fee appears on a statement. A tax arrives in an assessment. You can see them. You know they exist. You can choose to pay them or reduce them. The trajectory tax is invisible. It does not appear on any statement. No notification arrives when the window passes another year. No calculation is presented at the moment of delay. The tax accumulates silently in the space between where your capital trajectory is and where it would have been had the engine been running. Rockefeller had a phrase he returned to often. He said he knew how to wait, but he was precise about what waiting required. The mechanism had to be running while he waited. Capital in a refinery working, capital in a pipeline moving. Patience was not an action. Patience was the willingness to let the running mechanism do its work across the years. Stillness for Rockefeller was not the same as idleness. Stillness meant the structure was doing what it was built to do, without interference. Not that no structure had been built. You have been practicing a different kind of stillness, the kind where the mechanism has not yet been activated, where the launch has not occurred, where the window is passing, each year adding its tax to the accumulated deficit, quietly without announcement, with the arithmetic patience of a compounding engine running in the direction you have not yet entered. There is one more mechanism. The final one. It does not concern what the delay has already cost. It concerns what correcting the course will now require, and why that cost behaves the way it does. Return to the rocket one final time. It has missed the window. The engineers know it. The calculation has been run. The destination is unchanged. The mission is still viable, but there is a number on the new flight plan that was not on the original. And that number has a specific name in the language of orbital mechanics, delta V. It is the measure of the change in velocity required to move from one trajectory to another, to correct a deviation, to close the gap between where the spacecraft currently is and where the mission requires it to be. Delta V is not a judgment. It is not a criticism of the engineers who missed the window. It is a precise physical quantity, The exact cost, measured in fuel and thrust, of arriving at the correct trajectory from a position that was not the intended launch point. The correction cost is your delta V. It is not a punishment. It is not a consequence of failure. It is the precise calculable cost of closing the gap between the compounding trajectory you are currently on, which if you have not yet begun is a flat line, and the trajectory you would have been on had the engine started inside the launch window. It is real. It is measurable, and it behaves in a way that most people, when they finally understand it, find genuinely uncomfortable. It increases faster than you can earn. Here is the mechanism. The compounding gap created by delay does not hold still. It is not a fixed deficit waiting to be filled at whatever pace is convenient. It is itself a compounding quantity, because the gap is measured not in pounds missed but in compounding output missed, and compounding output grows exponentially, which means the gap grows exponentially, which means the effort required to close the gap grows exponentially. Put numbers to it. At 27, the monthly investment required to reach $1 million by age 67 at 8% annual growth is approximately $286 per month. Not a small number, but a manageable one for a person earning a reasonable income. At 32, the monthly investment required to reach the same $1 million by the same age 67 is approximately $400 per month. The 5-year delay, 5 years in which the monthly investment was zero, has increased the required correction by roughly $114 per month. Not the cost of the 5 missed years. The ongoing correction cost every month for the remaining 35 years. At 37, the required monthly investment to reach $1 million by 67 has risen to approximately $560 per month. The 10-year delay from 27 requires a doubling of the monthly contribution, not to gain ground but to reach the same destination the 27-year-old reaches with $286 per month. At 42, the number is approximately $790 per month. At 47, it is over $1,100 per month. The correction cost does not grow arithmetically. One additional unit of effort for each additional year of delay. It grows in the shape of a compounding curve because the gap it is closing is itself a compounding curve. And income, which grows at something closer to a linear rate across most careers, cannot outrun a compounding deficit. Not because the income is insufficient, because the income is growing in one dimension while the correction cost is growing in another. This is the structural truth that the phrase "still have time" obscures. It is true. At 37, there is still time. At 42, there is still time. The window does not close with a lock. But the correction cost at 42 is not the same number it was at 27. It is not even approximately the same number. It is a fundamentally different calculation. And the investor who arrives at 42 must now contribute nearly 4 times the monthly amount to reach the same outcome the 27-year-old reached with 1 unit of effort. This is not meant to induce panic. Panic is not useful. Panic is a motivational state, and this is not a motivational conversation. This is a structural observation, stated with the precision of an engineer reading from a flight plan, about the specific delta V required to correct a trajectory that has been drifting for a number of years. The correction is possible, that is not in question. But the cost of the correction is already larger than it was last year, and it will be larger next year than it is today. Not by a little. By the compounding mathematics of a gap that grows while unaddressed. Now the question that emerges from this mechanism is one most people never ask with precision. What is the cost of waiting one more year? Not in general, not in vague future value terms. Right now, at your current age, with your current intended investment amount, here is how to read that number. If you are 27 and you intend to invest $300 per month beginning when conditions are right, each additional year of delay increases your correction cost by approximately $16 per month, permanently. Not for the year of delay, for every month of every remaining year of the investment period. That $16 is the monthly cost of the compounding year you did not use. It is the additional contribution required every month for the rest of your investment life, simply to arrive at the same destination you would have reached at the lower rate had you begun a year earlier. 1 year of delay at 27 costs $16 per month, every month. For 40 years, that is $7,680 in additional lifetime contribution to correct a single year of delay on a $300 per month intended investment. Not the investment itself, The correction, 2 years of delay does not cost $15,360 because the second year of delay is more expensive than the first. The compounding gap has grown. The correction cost has compounded. 2 years of delay at 27 costs closer to $33,000 in additional lifetime contribution. 3 years closer to $55,000. 5 years, approximately $100,000 in additional lifetime contribution required. Simply to close the gap and return to the trajectory you would have been on had you started at 27. These numbers are not exaggerations. They are the arithmetic of compounding applied to delay instead of growth. The same mechanism that makes compound interest powerful when it works for you makes the correction cost accelerating when it works against you. The engine does not know whose side you are on. It runs. Consider now the specific position you are in. You are inside the launch window. The window that runs with decreasing return at each year of delay from 25 to 35. You have not closed the door. You have not landed in the category of investor who must construct an entirely different plan. You are standing at a launch pad that is still functional, with a trajectory that if activated today requires no correction fuel whatsoever. The original mission cost. The calculation the window was designed around. Every day that passes on that launch pad adds a small but permanent amount to the delta V requirement. Every month converts that daily accumulation into a structural adjustment to the monthly contribution needed for the rest of the investment period. Every year compounds the daily and monthly accumulations into a gap that requires not simply more effort but exponentially more effort to close. This is not a prediction. This is not a warning about what might happen. This is a description of what is already happening, at the rate of compound mathematics, every day, whether or not you have turned your attention to it. Rockefeller did not build Standard Oil by resolving every uncertainty before beginning. He understood something that most people do not: that the cost of waiting for certainty is always higher than the cost of beginning without it. Not because beginning is pleasant or clear or risk-free, but because the mechanism that makes wealth structural, compounding capital deployed across time, does not yield its full benefit to a person who enters the mechanism after the optimal window, any more than a rocket reaches its destination on the same fuel budget when it launches from the wrong position. He built the refinery first. He solved the inefficiencies inside the running system, not outside it, because a refinery that is not running produces nothing to optimize. You are in possession of a launch window that is, as of this moment, still aligned. The trajectory is achievable on the original fuel budget. The mechanism requires only one thing to begin producing what it was designed to produce. There are 3 numbers that now exist in your understanding of your own position. The first is the compounding output of capital deployed inside the launch window. The output the mechanism produces when the launch occurs at the design point. That number grows without your involvement once the engine is running. It is patient. It is structural. It does not require your attention to accumulate. The second is the trajectory tax, the compounding deficit that accumulates with every year of delay inside the window. That number is already running. It grew last year. It grew this year. It will grow next year at a rate slightly higher than it grew this year, because the gap is compounding in the same direction as the growth it is replacing. The third is the correction cost, the permanent increase in monthly contribution required to close the gap, calculated forward from your current position to your terminal investment age. That number is not a one-time payment. It is a monthly adjustment that applies to every remaining month of the investment period, and it increases with each additional year of delay. None of these numbers require you to have done something wrong. They require only that time has passed, and that the mechanism was not running during the time that passed. The launch window between 25 and 35 is not a moral argument. It is not a judgment on your choices. It is a structural interval defined by the arithmetic of compound capital, during which the mathematics of wealth accumulation are more favorable than they will be at any subsequent point in your life. You are still inside it. That is a fact. Not comfort. A fact. But the window is not static. It is not equally open at every point within it. Each year inside the window that passes without the compounding engine running is a year of trajectory tax and a year of correction cost, permanently embedded in the calculation of what is now required to reach the same destination. The rocket does not care about your reasons. The physics of orbital mechanics do not record your intentions. The engineers calculating delta V do not take into account that the conditions on the launch pad were uncertain, or that the timing felt premature, or that a clearer moment seemed always to be approaching. They read only 2 things: the current position and the distance to the target trajectory. Your current position is inside the launch window. The target trajectory, The compounding output of capital deployed consistently across the most productive decades of compound growth is still accessible from where you are standing. The countdown that began when you turned 25 or 27, or whenever you first understood that you should be doing this and found reasons not to, that countdown is running. It has always been running. The only variable the calculation has ever required from you is the moment you decide to launch.